it's important that we change sort of the message and the framing of what's coming out of the United States Congress. And I think, we can only do so much from the outside looking in. But what we need are champions to really work these issues from the inside, and with us supporting the champions in, the halls of Congress. So, and I am just so pleased that we certainly have one of those members here with us today, a friend of the coalition. Yeah, he's been with us, and this is our 6th Summit on Aging, and he's been here to support us, at least on a couple other occasions, and it warms my heart to know that he's back again. And this, we have 435 members of Congress. But as you become seasoned and become someone who really becomes skillful at what you do and with compassion behind it, that's where you really draw the difference and where you stand out and become a leader. And I am so grateful that, such a person who fits that example is with us today, and that's Congressman Xavier Becerra. He is a leader. He is a champion. Not only has he sort of moved up in the ranks and is now a real leader in Congress, but the more important thing is that he knows intimately well the issues, the policies of aging and long-term care. He understands and he champions the cause around Social Security, Medicare, Older Americans Act. So it's not just when I'm speaking to him, it's not like it's 101 aging. It's really, it's about, we are now in graduate school and trying to figure out how to change things and really disrupt things in Congress to really make a difference. And he's a champion, and I just wish we could, sort of replicate you in many ways, across the halls. But Congressman, I'll just say one last thing to Nora. It's unfortunate that as you're traveling around and you're gathering all this information, that you don't have members of Congress like Xavier Becerra joining you, because my goodness, I think that might change the rhetoric coming out of the halls of Congress. But short of that, we're fortunate that we have with us today our champion, our leader in Congress, Congressman Xavier Becerra.
So one time I introduced Rigo as a handsome and powerful man, and you can see how long that I've been benefiting as a result of having introduced him that way. You don't even have to slip him a 20, and he does what it takes to give you an introduction. To Rigo, if I may start, because of your years of just championing the cause of, I don't think of them as older Americans. I think of them as Americans who built this country. I think of them as Americans who spent their life making it possible for their kids to do better and to dream that they would have much more than their parents ever had. I think of them as people who believed in what we call the American dream. And I think of them as people who never expected that in this country we would ever let people who have graduated to the point of now living in dignity have to fear that that won't be the case. And so to Rigo Saboria, I say, thank you for being one of those people who believes in Americans who built this country and now deserve to be honored as our greatest asset that we have seen to build up America. So thank you to you and all those people like that. To Nora Super for having taken the time to be here in gorgeous Los Angeles. I think we brought Washington, D.C. weather over here, didn't we? But I think it's important that we have champions at the White House beyond just the president, who are working on behalf of people who work very hard. And I am thrilled that, Nora, you have taken the time to be with us here in Los Angeles, and we'll treat you to some sun before that rain comes, but we do want some of that rain. And I hope that what you find is that in LA, you got some warriors ready to do battle to make sure that we do the right thing in reauthorizing the Older Americans Act, fighting for Social Security, fighting against those who are trying to manufacture a crisis in Social Security within the disability insurance program, and that we will be there to make sure that we are your warriors. There's a gentleman in the room who I have to say hello to because I probably learned more from him, in many ways, just from watching him work, that has made me someone who believes so much, as I said, in elevating my parents, your grandparents, your brothers and sisters, and that's Ernie Powell, who I know for the longest time has been working on issues for seniors and others, and I just want to say hello to you. I could go on and introduce and recognize a lot of folks, but let me stop for a second because I think you're all champions. Now, many of us are wearing our gray very, very well, and those of you who think you don't have gray, just look a little closer. You'll see it. You'll see it. And I think it's important. These are my badges of honor. By the way, forgive me, guys, but I'm very pleased that I can say I have a lot of this badges of honor. Every one of those single grays comes at the expense of something. That means you're doing something. And you're doing more than just aging. You're probably working. And I hope those of you who are wearing your gray well understand that we have some extra work to do these days. I've never seen a case where it's been so difficult to reauthorize the Older Americans Act in our history. I don't get it. You talk to any older American, I don't care what their political stripe, Republican, Democrat, Independent, they're going to tell you, if I am going to grow old, let me grow old in my home with my family, not in some nursing home where I'll only get visited every once in a while by my relatives and loved ones. Let me grow old with the people who love me. And if I expire a little sooner, if it's in dignity, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. But yet we can't reauthorize in Congress the statute that makes it possible for us to provide the resources to the states and the cities and the families who would love nothing more than to say that to their grandparent, parent, brother, sister, you absolutely will stay with us in your last years of life in dignity. It is incredible. Let me tell you what else is incredible. There are $2.8 trillion right now in the Social Security Trust Fund because of you, and because of the other 168 million Americans today who are at work, and when they get that paycheck and at the end of this week or at the end of this month, they will have a deduction in it, that FICA deduction, which goes to Social Security. All of us together, as Americans, over 80 years of Social Security have built up that trust fund. The trust fund really wasn't created until a little later on. It was created a few decades ago. But that trust fund, where we have been putting more money into the fund than we need to pay out to all those who worked hard to earn those benefits, has accrued to the point of being $2.8 trillion. Now, there are people who say that Social Security is going bankrupt, it is broke, and that is funny money. Let me tell you, when you look at your paycheck, if you're still working, and if you see a FICA deduction, you tell the federal government that that's funny money and that you don't want to take it out. And I guarantee you they will tell you, it is real. It is real. It is real. And so please don't let anybody tell you that Social Security is broke. You hear these surrealistic estimates that Social Security, an entitlement program. It is, by the way, it is not an entitlement program. It is an earned program. What you are entitled to is to fight like a warrior to make it better. But it is not an entitlement. You earned it. We earned it. And there are people who say, well, if you look into the infinite horizon, the cost of Social Security is in the trillions of dollars. You know what? if you were to look at the budget for the Pentagon into the infinite horizon, it would be vastly bigger than Social Security. Because see, there is money dedicated to Social Security to pay for those services from our paychecks every day. There's no money that's dedicated directly from our paychecks to go to the Pentagon. We provide the Pentagon with the money it needs, and we should, because the Pentagon is entitled to have its resources. So it is an entitlement program to receive money into the Pentagon. As it is for every other program, it doesn't have a dedicated source of money. FDR did us all a favor. He didn't just say, we're going to create a program and hope that you will, wink, wink, support it. No, he made you put your money behind that. Our money is behind our mouth when we talk about Social Security. It is not an entitlement. It is earned. And over 80 years, you can do the very simple math. We have contributed as Americans in those 80 years over $18 trillion in our taxpayer money, and with the interest that taxpayer money is earned in the trust fund, to Social Security. And in that same amount of time, we've used just slightly over $15 trillion to pay out benefits to those who've earned the right to receive those benefits. It doesn't take a lot of science to know that if you take 18 trillion and subtract 15.2 trillion, you end up with 2.8 trillion. That's what we have in the trust fund. And so when people tell you it's going broke, or when they tell you there's no money to make sure that those Americans who are receiving disability benefits shouldn't face a 20% or will face a 20% cut because there's no money, shame on them for saying it. But shame on us if we let them do it. And that's where I think I have a message for those of us who are wearing well our gray. We got a fight ahead of us. Because see, someone's trying to tell you that if you're retired and receiving Social Security, you should covet it and protect it against those who want to receive their Social Security benefits because they lost they lost their lives, and now their survivors, or children or spouses, are now receiving it under the survivor's benefit portion of Social Security. Or, more directly, today, it's the argument that, well, those who are disabled want to take money from you who are retired in Social Security. When in fact, I guarantee you there's probably some of you in this room, if you're seniors and receiving Social Security, who may have actually received disability benefits under Social Security before you transitioned to Social Security's retirement benefit, right? There we see some hands. And by the way, you didn't have to reapply to get those Social Security retirement benefits after you had received your Social Security disability benefits, because it's one seamless program. Social Security is there to provide us with what we earned in the event we die while we're working, in the event we become disabled while we were working, or if we're fortunate to reach the age where we can retire. It's 3 in 1. It's not 3 separate accounts. When you see that FICA deduction from your check, there's not a deduction for disability insurance, there's not a deduction for survivor insurance, and there's not a deduction for retirement insurance. It is one program. But there are some in Congress who want to wall off each one, so ultimately they can discard some of them. And what they want to do is they want to pit Social Security beneficiaries against each other. It's a tried and true game, right? Peter's taking money from Paul. When the reality is Peter is Paul's brother. And Peter and Paul built this country together, and they both earned the chance for this country to respect them both, if they are retired, disabled, or they are the survivor of someone in this country who worked very hard and happened to have perished. And this message, I go to those who have the least amount of gray here for just a second. Because the disability insurance policy isn't so much important now to those who are receiving their retirement benefit under Social Security. It's for you, because the actuaries will tell you that 1 in 5 Americans who are in their 20s today working are going to become disabled. This is about you. And so we have to be warriors for people like FDR, who are no longer around, but had the foresight to understand what it would take to make sure we respected those who build this country. Now, I know everywhere around the country this week, people are assembling just like you to talk about what we need to do to help older Americans. And the reality is that older Americans are doing better than a lot of very young Americans. And we're not interested in trying to make sure older Americans do well at the expense of younger Americans or our children. What we're simply trying to do is recognize that we have an obligation to make sure that we don't let those who will no longer have a source of income because they're not going to be working anymore, or no longer have parents that they will look at because their parents have long since left this place, that we respect, that we understand what it means to have that cycle of life where we work hard to get our kids to college, to be able to buy that house. And then at the end, we work hard to make sure we can retire in dignity and security. And that's why this day, this week, this month, Older Americans Month is so important, because what we're simply saying is we want to remember that. We all go through that cycle. And when we make the right investments, when you are willing to let money be taken out of your paycheck, every paycheck, for a program called Social Security, that we do it because we understand that cycle of life. And so, here's my pitch. We should not let anyone give us an excuse for not reauthorizing the Older Americans Act anymore. We need to especially those of us who understand on the ground every day what it means to have services provided through the Older Americans Act. By the way, we probably have more people in this room today if we had the Older Americans Act in place, because since it's not in place, the funding that usually comes to make sure that we get the advocates together isn't coming from the federal government to do simple things like bring you all together. And so the funding for these types of activities are coming through other sources, other very valuable sources that may have been used to do other very valuable services. So in every single way, not having the Older Americans Act reauthorized by Congress is not only costing us money, it may cost us precious services. We need to make sure that towards the end of November of 2016, which is when the actuaries tell us that the disability insurance fund in Social Security will top out, that no one in America says that because the formula created to distribute the money into the disability insurance fund versus the old age and retirement fund within Social Security should be the reason why Americans who have qualified for that disability, and they are the most disabled of our brothers and sisters, that they should suffer a 20% cut. That's what they face come November, December 2016, a 20% cut in their benefits. Remember, these are not Americans who are disabled and never contributed. You cannot qualify for Social Security unless you paid into it, unless you worked and paid into it. These are Americans who have become disabled, can no longer work, and paid into Social Security. We cannot let anyone say that with a $2.8 trillion surplus, which was built up by those very people who are disabled today, that we are going to start to segregate ourselves off into enclaves and say, I get mine when I become retired, so I can't let you have yours because you somehow became disabled. And we have to let everybody know it's not about protecting one or the other. It's about making sure we let everyone understand the value of having dignity in your life. And so we need you. I don't know what else you're going to do today, but if I can just let you know there's armor outside of these doors for you to put on, to get ready, to be the warriors, to fight this battle. The armor is invisible. You won't see it because it doesn't take a shield. It doesn't take metal. It simply takes you doing what you do so very well. You talk to those members of Congress. You lobby. You write those letters. You do not let some politician get away with saying that Social Security is bankrupt. And you make sure that you let everyone know who wants to be a leader in this country that if you want to be a leader, from cradle to grave, you respect the people who built this country. And we need you. We need you to be champions. This is the time. This is an interesting place and an interesting age we live. We don't know if we're going to be able to reach an agreement with Iran on whether or not it will diminish its capacities and hopefully eliminate its capacities to build nuclear bombs. We don't know if we'll be able to get rid of the scourge of disease, not just in America, but in places that are being impacted far greater than the U.S. Don't know if we're going to find that Wall Street decides to play with our money again and run us into ruin. But we do know this. If we work hard in this country, you'll be like my father who got to the 6th grade and worked as a laborer most of his life, who somehow, with a wife he married and brought from Mexico at the age of 18, when she was 18, and today they can say they bought their home, they sent their 4 kids to college, and they are living a dignified retirement. If we can push, if we can fight for that, we have just guaranteed the American dream for the next generation. That is our task. That's why that invisible armor is waiting for you outside those doors, because I see that as you get ready, you have worn well the age and experience that comes from fighting for what is right for our country. My last 3 words to you: we the people. It started a long time ago. We the people. We should not forget that we are we the people. Although sometimes over the course of our history, it was hard to believe that we were included in that we the people. Over the centuries, our country does a pretty good job of trying to prove that, you know what, we made a mistake, but we are we the people. Whether it's civil rights, whether it's treating anyone who loves another person with the same respect to Mary as we would love to see with our own family members, or whether it's the issue of respecting people who built this country, it is only if we the people fight for that we will ensure that older Americans have the respect and dignity they deserve. So please remember, as you put on that armor, we put that armor on as we the people. Thank you very much.